So charismatic leadership and charismatic authority is one of these, loaded cult terms that means, I think, sometimes more and sometimes less than what we think it means when we're talking about the need for a cult to have a charismatic leader. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, and the author of Uncultured, about growing up in the Children of God religious cult and then going into the U.S. Army. You can get autographed copies attached here. So anyways, charismatic authority, the term charismatic authority comes about because of this dude named Max Weber. This is reading from a bit of the book that I'm writing now called The Culting of America. So a sociologist named Max Weber, who's famous for being one of the founding fathers of sociology, and who therefore has somewhat of his own cult following, gave us the term charismatic authority. The term itself has decidedly religious origins, where outstanding qualities are seen as a gift from God, a kind of divine endorsement that gives the leader his authority. This went hand in hand, of course, with the divine right of kings. Weber generalized this concept for use in the everyday, and in the 2020s, the concept of charismatic leaders is applied broadly to politicians, military leaders, celebrities, CEOs, and many others. Weber defined the difference between power and authority by telling us that power can be exerted by the use of force or violence. Authority, by contrast, depends on the acceptance by subordinates of the rights of those above them to give orders or directives. Charismatic authority is often the most lasting of regimes because the leader is seen as infallible, and any action against him will be seen as a crime against the state. Charismatic rule is often seen in authoritarian states, dictatorships, autocracies, and theocracies, and cults, the kind of governing we thought we left behind during the Enlightenment. Max Weber posited that humans needed charisma to replace the disenchantment we felt as a result of advancing so much that we lost the concept of magic in our lives. He wrote in 1913 that charisma was a word applied to a certain quality of an individual person by virtue of which he is considered extraordinary and treated as endowed with supernatural, superhuman, or at least specifically exceptional powers or qualities. These are such as are not accessible to the ordinary person, but are regarded as of divine origin or exemplary. Notice all that religious-sounding language? The charismatic leader brought some of that sense of divine magic, but at a cost. One of the synonyms Weber suggested for charismatic leadership was domination. And he said that charismatic leaders eventually develop a cult of personality, often not by their own doing. And then I go, speaking of cults, which is always fun that I get to say every day in my life, about how they're having a resurgence right now because we see cults pop up in times of social turmoil. But basically, right, the word charisma has come to be used almost as a synonym for charming. Right? Like, we all know it means like charming plus a little something that we can't explain, right? And it's just like, oh, that you have charisma.
Oh, yeah, baby.
But and then this is why people are confused, because most cult leaders don't come off as like ineffably charming. And, oftentimes they're not great looking, but once people fall in love with them, they think they are. But the whole concept of charismatic authority is just, the difference of like the authority you have when your children are little and you can pick them up and make them go somewhere with you, and the authority you have to convince your teenage kids to come with you to go do something, right? It just means we have agreed that you are our leader because of these reasons, these things about you. Now, this concept, when it's brought into the workplace, like organizationally, that's a little different, I think, because it's not leadership by, might or power, but it's also kind of, a lot of the times it's like
it doesn't go.
Because you know this thing, because you have this skill, you're at this level. And then the people above you are expected to have these skills, and nobody knows anything about leadership. But when you have someone who is a charismatic leader, so who's in the role, right, under this umbrella concept where like husband is the head of household, each one of those dudes is a charismatic authority in his own household. And this is why in the documentary Happy Shiny People about the ILBP, which Tia Leving's great book, A Well-Trained Wife, just came out last week, debuted on the New York Times. It's really, really good. But they say in there quite powerfully, you know, Bill Gothard made every father a cult leader and every house an island. Right? So that's why I think there's this sense of disconnect when people are like, oh, but they're not charming and suave and sometimes even well-spoken, you know, all these things we expect of cult leaders. And of course we have the kind of extreme ones who were like your Jim Joneses. But you have a lot of them that are just kind of bumbling fools, and they need a lot of whitewash from the people in their circle, but they have the ability to get people to put their trust in them enough that they will follow and do what they are told. Maybe this is helpful, and if not, this is why I wrote a 30-page chapter about the charismatic leader. And a whole separate chapter about the skinny white woman.